Drink it, or you'll never leave this room alive." The trembling hands of 69-year-old Palesa Dlamini barely held the glass as tears streamed silently down her face. Standing over her with an icy smile, her daughter-in-law, Ayanda, watched without a trace of mercy. Hidden behind the kitchen doorway, young housemaid Naledi Mokoena pressed record on her phone, terrified that even a single sound might cost her life. She knew what she was witnessing could destroy an entire family, but if she stayed silent, an innocent woman might never see another sunrise. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is in your country. We'd love to see how far this story reaches. And if you enjoy powerful stories of justice, hope, and unforgettable twists, don't forget to subscribe for more. Morning sunlight poured through the wide glass windows of an elegant home in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg. The polished floors reflected every ray, making the house appear warm and inviting to anyone standing outside. Fresh flowers decorated the entrance hall, expensive paintings hung neatly on the walls, and every piece of furniture spoke of comfort and success. To neighbors and business associates, the Dlamini family represented everything people admired: wealth earned through hard work, respect within the community, and a home where 3 generations supposedly lived together in harmony. But beautiful houses often hid painful secrets. At exactly 6 o'clock every morning, before anyone else woke up, Palesa Dlamini quietly left her bedroom, carrying a small prayer book that had become worn from decades of use. She slowly walked toward the kitchen, her knees aching from age, but her posture still carrying quiet dignity. At 69 years old, she moved more carefully than she once had, yet she insisted on preparing breakfast herself whenever she could. She believed love was shown through simple daily acts. As she placed the kettle on the stove, she smiled softly while remembering another kitchen many years earlier. It had been tiny, with cracked walls and an old wooden table. Back then, she had struggled to raise her only son after losing her husband in a construction accident. There had been mornings when all she could afford was a single loaf of bread that needed to last for 2 days. She never allowed young Thabo to know how often she skipped meals so he could eat. When other children arrived at school wearing new uniforms, Thabo's clothes were carefully patched by hand every weekend. Whenever he apologized for asking for school supplies, Palesa would simply laugh and tell him that education was the greatest investment a mother could ever make. She worked as a hospital cleaner during the day. At night, she washed clothes for neighbors. On weekends, she sold homemade pastries at the local taxi rank. Years passed like that. Every sacrifice had one purpose: her son. Eventually, those sacrifices began to bear fruit. Thabo excelled in school, earned scholarships, studied engineering, and years later founded a successful construction company. His reputation grew rapidly across South Africa. Newspapers praised him as one of Johannesburg's rising entrepreneurs, while business magazines admired his honesty and determination. Whenever journalists asked where his ambition came from, he always answered with the same words: "My mother." For a long time, those words had made Palesa believe every hardship had been worthwhile. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. "Good morning, Mama Palesa," a soft voice said. Palesa turned with a smile. Naledi Mokoena entered the kitchen carrying fresh vegetables from the garden. At only 24 years old, she had worked for the family for nearly 3 years. She came from a small village in Limpopo and had accepted the housekeeping job to help pay university tuition for her younger brother. Unlike many servants who remain distant from employers, Naledi possessed genuine warmth. She greeted everyone respectfully, worked diligently without complaint, and treated Palesa with sincere affection. "You woke up too early again," Naledi said gently. Palesa laughed. "Old people don't need much sleep." Naledi shook her head while taking over the cooking. "You promised me yesterday you'd let me prepare breakfast. And you promised me you wouldn't worry about an old woman. The two women smiled together. Their conversations were always simple, but they filled the quiet kitchen with a sense of peace that Palesa rarely found elsewhere in the house. Unfortunately, that peace never lasted long. Sharp footsteps echoed from the staircase. Ayanda Dlamini entered wearing an elegant cream-colored business suit, despite having nowhere important to be that morning. Every detail of her appearance looked perfect, from her carefully styled hair to the expensive jewelry resting around her neck. She paused near the dining table and glanced toward Palesa. Her smile appeared polite. Her eyes did not. "Oh," Ayanda said coolly. "You're already in the kitchen." Palesa nodded kindly. "I thought I'd make breakfast." Ayanda looked toward Naledi instead. "I hired staff for a reason." Naledi immediately lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, madam. I wasn't speaking to you." The room fell silent. Palesa quietly stepped away from the stove. "I only wanted to help." Ayanda sighed dramatically. "Mother, you've worked hard your entire life. Why don't you simply rest, instead of making extra work for everyone?" The words sounded considerate. The tone did not. Palesa recognized the difference immediately. She forced a smile. "I understand." Ayanda turned toward Naledi. "Please disinfect everything again." Naledi hesitated. "Everything. Everything." Ayanda glanced briefly at the cup Palesa had just touched. "We have to be careful about hygiene." The statement hung heavily in the air. Palesa quietly folded her hands together. She understood exactly what had just happened. Without directly insulting her, Ayanda had implied she was dirty inside her own home. Naledi's heart tightened. She knew Palesa had washed her hands only moments earlier. Still, she silently obeyed. As she wiped the counter again, she noticed Palesa quietly leaving the kitchen without saying another word. No complaint, no anger, only sadness. Later that morning, Tabo joined everyone for breakfast before leaving for an important meeting. He kissed his mother's forehead warmly. "Good morning, Mama." Palesa smiled with genuine happiness. "My son." For a brief moment, the years disappeared. She still saw the little boy who once ran home carrying schoolbooks held together with string. Tabo noticed. She looked tired. "Did you sleep well?" Before Palesa could answer, Ayanda spoke first. "She wandered around the house before sunrise again." Tabo looked concerned. "Mama, you should tell the doctor if you're having trouble sleeping." "I was only making tea." Ayanda smiled sympathetically. Sometimes she forgets how much she's already done. The sentence sounded harmless, yet something about it lingered in the room. Forgets. The word settled quietly inside Tabo's mind. He did not question it. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully. "We'll arrange another checkup." Palesa lowered her eyes. She wasn't sick. She wasn't confused. She was simply growing older. But each passing week, Ayanda found new ways to make ordinary moments sound like signs of mental decline. After breakfast, Tabo left for work, promising to return before dinner. The large front gate closed behind his car. Almost immediately, the atmosphere inside the mansion changed. Ayanda's pleasant expression disappeared. She looked toward Naledi. "I want every bedroom cleaned again." "They were cleaned yesterday, madam." "I didn't ask when they were cleaned." "Yes, madam." "And from now on," Ayanda continued, "Mama Palesa should remain downstairs unless someone is with her." Naledi blinked. "Is something wrong?" Ayanda folded her arms. "Ow. I'm thinking about her safety." Again the words sounded reasonable, but something felt deeply unsettling. Palesa quietly stood near the living room window, pretending not to hear. She watched birds landing in the garden while fighting back tears. This was the house she had helped build. She had sold the only piece of land left by her late husband so Tabo could afford the first investment that eventually became his company. Every brick surrounding her carried memories of sacrifice, yet now she felt like a visitor waiting for permission to exist. Naledi watched from across the hallway. Something inside her refused to accept what she was witnessing. She had worked in wealthy homes before. She knew families argued. She knew misunderstandings happened. But this was different. Ayanda never shouted. She never struck Palesa. She smiled. She spoke softly. She used polite words, and somehow every conversation left the elderly woman looking smaller than before. Naledi couldn't explain it. She only knew one thing. Behind Ayanda's calm voice lived something cold, something calculated, something dangerous. As evening approached, Palesa sat alone on the garden bench, watching the sun disappear behind the trees. Inside the house, laughter echoed as Ayanda spoke cheerfully on the phone with friends. Outside, Palesa quietly whispered the evening prayer she had recited every night for decades. She prayed for her son. She prayed for peace. She even prayed for Ayanda. Standing unseen near the doorway, Naledi listened silently. For the first time since joining the Dlamini household, she found herself wondering whether kindness alone could protect someone as gentle as Palesa. Deep in her heart, an uneasy feeling continued to grow. She couldn't yet explain why, but she sensed that the worst was still to come. The following Monday began like every other morning inside the Dlamini mansion. Everything looked orderly. Fresh flowers stood in crystal vases. The marble floors gleamed beneath the morning sun. Soft classical music drifted through the hidden ceiling speakers. Anyone passing the house would have imagined that everyone inside lived peacefully together. Only those under the roof knew how carefully appearances were maintained. Palesa had learned to make herself almost invisible. She no longer entered the kitchen before sunrise. She no longer watered the roses she had planted years earlier because Ayanda insisted professional gardeners could do it better. Even arranging family photographs on the shelves had quietly become forbidden after Ayanda claimed they made the house look old-fashioned. Each day, another small piece of Palesa's life disappeared. No argument ever accompanied these changes. Only calm smiles, only polite words. Only gentle suggestions that slowly erased her place inside the home. After breakfast, Palesa decided to sit on the shaded veranda with a book she had been reading for weeks. She barely finished 2 pages before Ayanda appeared, carrying a decorative cushion. "You shouldn't sit outside alone," Ayanda said pleasantly. Palesa looked up. "I've always enjoyed the morning air." "I know." Ayanda adjusted the cushion with exaggerated care. "But if you fall, people will blame me." "I won't fall. I'm only thinking about your safety." Again, there was nothing openly cruel in the sentence. Yet Palesa quietly closed her book and returned inside. Naledi watched everything while dusting the hallway. She noticed something she had never paid attention to before. Every conversation ended exactly the same way. Palesa always gave in. Ayanda always appeared reasonable. Anyone witnessing only the final moments would assume the elderly woman was simply being stubborn. Only someone watching from beginning to end could see how skillfully every situation was manipulated. Later that afternoon, Tabo returned home earlier than expected after one of his meetings had been cancelled. Seeing his son unexpectedly filled Palesa with joy. "I was thinking of making your favorite bean stew tonight," she said. Before Tabo could answer, Ayanda smiled. "I've already ordered dinner from that new restaurant you like." Tabo nodded. "That works too." Palesa smiled politely. "Of course." She turned away before either of them noticed the disappointment in her eyes. Cooking had once been how she expressed love. Now, even that had quietly been taken away. During dinner, Ayanda guided every conversation with remarkable skill. She praised Thabo's latest business contract. She discussed charity events. She complimented his leadership. Only after the atmosphere became relaxed did she casually glance toward Palesa. Mother forgot where the teacups were this morning. Palesa looked up in surprise. I didn't forget. Ayanda laughed softly. Oh, perhaps I misunderstood. Thabo smiled awkwardly. It happens. Palesa wanted to explain that Ayanda herself had moved the cups to another cabinet the previous evening. Instead, she remained silent. The conversation continued. A few minutes later, Ayanda spoke again. She also left the back door unlocked yesterday. I locked it, Palesa replied quietly. Ayanda tilted her head. Did you? Her tone carried gentle uncertainty. Not accusation, not certainty. Just enough doubt. Thabo frowned slightly. Mama, maybe you're doing too much. Palesa felt her stomach tighten. She wasn't being called a liar. She was being encouraged to doubt herself. There was a difference. And somehow, it hurt even more. That evening, after everyone retired to their rooms, Naledi found Palesa sitting alone in the library. The elderly woman wasn't reading. She was simply staring at an old family photograph. It showed Thabo, at 12 years old, proudly holding a school trophy while standing beside his mother. Their smiles were identical. Naledi approached carefully. Would you like some tea? Palesa smiled. Thank you. A few minutes later, they sat together in silence. Finally, Naledi spoke. You're very quiet these days. Palesa looked down at the cup in her hands. Old people become quieter. I don't think that's the reason. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Palesa sighed. When Thabo was little, he believed everything I told him. She smiled sadly. Now he believes everything that sounds reasonable. Naledi listened carefully. I don't want him choosing between his wife and his mother. So you say nothing? Palesa nodded. A marriage is fragile. Naledi wanted to disagree. Instead, she asked softly, And what about you? Palesa answered with a tired smile. Mothers learn to survive loneliness. The words stayed with Naledi long after she returned to work. The following morning brought another small incident. A package arrived for Thabo containing important construction documents. The delivery driver mistakenly handed it to Palesa because she answered the door first. She immediately placed it on the entrance table. Half an hour later, Ayanda walked into the hallway. Where are Thabo's documents? They're on the table. Ayanda looked around dramatically. I don't see them. Palesa frowned. They were right there. Ayanda searched several drawers before shaking her head. Oh dear. Naledi entered, carrying folded laundry. What happened? The documents are missing. Naledi looked toward the entrance. They were there earlier. Ayanda sighed. Mother probably moved them. I didn't. You may not remember. Palesa's breathing became heavier. I remember. I'm sure you believe you do. The sentence landed like a stone. Just then, Thabo walked downstairs. What's wrong? Ayanda answered gently. We're trying to find your documents. I left them on the table, Palesa insisted. Thabo searched for several minutes. Finally, Ayanda opened a cabinet beneath the stairs. There they are. The envelope rested neatly inside. Palesa stared at it in confusion. I never put it there. Ayanda smiled sympathetically. It's all right. Thabo picked up the envelope. Mama, maybe it's time we had another memory assessment. Palesa felt something inside her quietly break. She wanted to defend herself. She wanted to explain. But the certainty on Ayanda's face made every explanation sound like denial. Only Naledi noticed something unusual. When Ayanda bent to retrieve the envelope, she did so without searching. almost as though she already knew exactly where it was. That single detail refused to leave Naledi's mind. Later, while vacuuming the upstairs hallway, she accidentally passed the guest bedroom. The door stood slightly open. Inside, Ayanda was speaking on the phone. Naledi wasn't trying to listen. She simply couldn't avoid hearing the conversation. No, not yet. A pause. He's beginning to notice small things. Another pause. Yes, she's becoming exactly what I expected. Naledi froze. Ayanda lowered her voice. If everyone believes she's confused first, everything else becomes much easier. Naledi's heart skipped. Before she could hear more, a floorboard creaked beneath her shoe. Ayanda stopped speaking immediately. The bedroom door swung open. Naledi quickly continued vacuuming, as though nothing had happened. Ayanda stepped into the hallway. Their eyes met. For one long moment, neither woman spoke. Then Ayanda smiled. Naledi. Yes, madam. You seem to appear everywhere. I was only cleaning. I'm sure you were. Ayanda's smile lingered. But remember, she stepped a little closer. In this house, curiosity creates unnecessary problems. Naledi lowered her eyes. I understand. Ayanda walked away. Only after she disappeared downstairs did Naledi realize her hands were trembling. She replayed the words she had overheard. If everyone believes she's confused first, everything else becomes much easier. She didn't know exactly what Ayanda meant, but for the first time she no longer believed the cruelty inside the house was simply emotional manipulation. It felt like preparation. Preparation for something much darker. That evening, Naledi watches Palesa sitting alone by the window while the rest of the family gathered in another room without inviting her. The elderly woman quietly smiled to herself as she knitted a small blanket for the baby of a church friend. Even after everything she endured, she still spent her time creating something for someone else. Naledi felt both admiration and fear. She had entered the Dlamini home believing she worked for a successful family. Now, she was beginning to suspect she had walked into a carefully constructed trap, and she couldn't shake the terrifying feeling that Palesa was standing at its very center. Over the next several days, Naledi found herself watching the Dlamini household more carefully than ever before. She no longer saw isolated incidents. She saw patterns. Every conversation, every interruption, every carefully chosen word from Ayanda seemed to follow the same invisible script. Nothing appeared dramatic enough for outsiders to notice, yet every interaction slowly chipped away at Palesa's confidence. By Friday morning, even the servants had begun whispering among themselves. Madame Palesa seems different lately, one gardener remarked while trimming the hedges. Perhaps she's getting old, another replied. Naledi remained silent. She knew those opinions had not formed naturally. Someone had planted them. Inside the house, Palesa folded freshly washed towels in the laundry room, despite being repeatedly told she no longer needed to help. Working with her hands helped quiet her thoughts. Naledi entered, carrying another basket. You should rest, she said gently. Palesa smiled. If I stop working completely, I'll stop feeling useful. Naledi sat beside her. You've spent your whole life taking care of other people. And that is exactly why it's difficult to stop. She folded another towel carefully. When someone spends decades being needed, becoming unnecessary feels like disappearing. Naledi looked at the elderly woman. You are not unnecessary. Palesa's smile warmed for a moment. Thank you, child. Before either woman could continue, Ayanda walked into the room. There you are. She glanced briefly at Palesa. I've been looking everywhere. I was helping with the laundry. Ayanda sighed. I thought we agreed that the staff would handle these things. I only wanted to stay busy. I understand. Her voice remained perfectly calm. But if visitors see you doing housework, they'll think we're neglecting you. Palesa quietly placed the towel back into the basket. I didn't think about that. Ayanda smiled. I know. Once again, she had managed to make Palesa feel guilty for doing something harmless. After lunch, Thabo called from Cape Town. A major construction contract required him to remain away for another 2 days. I'm sorry, Mama, he said over speakerphone. I'll make it up to you when I get back. Palesa smiled despite missing him. Your work comes first. Ayanda took the phone. Don't worry about anything here. I'll take good care of Mother. Naledi happened to be passing the hallway when she heard those words. For reasons she couldn't explain, they unsettled her. That evening, while cleaning Ayanda's dressing room, Naledi noticed something unusual. Several prescription bottles sat inside an expensive leather organizer. At first glance, they looked ordinary, but one bottle had no pharmacy label, only a plain white sticker. No patient name, no dosage instructions, nothing. Naledi picked it up briefly. The liquid inside appeared colorless. Footsteps echoed outside. She quickly placed it back exactly where she had found it. Ayanda entered moments later. What are you doing? I've finished dusting, madam. Ayanda's eyes moved briefly toward the organizer, then back to Naledi. Good. Nothing more was said. Yet Naledi noticed Ayanda locking the drawer before leaving the room. She had never done that before. Later that night, Palesa complained of mild dizziness. Naledi helped her to bed. Should I call the doctor? Palesa shook her head. It's probably nothing. Have you been taking your medicine? Yes. Every day? I think so. Naledi paused. May I see it? Palesa opened the bedside drawer. The tablets looked different. They changed color, Naledi said. I assumed the pharmacy changed brands. Naledi wasn't convinced. The container carried no pharmacy stamp she recognized, only another plain label. A quiet uneasiness settled inside her. The following morning, she accompanied Palesa to the nearby garden. The elderly woman loved feeding birds after breakfast. As they scattered seeds across the grass, Palesa finally spoke. When I was young, I believed growing old meant becoming wise. Naledi smiled. Don't you still believe that? I do. She watched 2 small birds land nearby. But wisdom doesn't stop loneliness. Naledi hesitated. Do you think Mr. Thabo notices what's happening? Palesa answered slowly. He notices only what he's allowed to see. Naledi looked puzzled. Palesa continued. When someone controls every conversation before another person enters the room, the truth arrives already dressed as a lie. Those words stayed with Naledi all day. That afternoon, another strange event occurred. A courier delivered confidential financial papers addressed to Ayanda. She accepted the envelope personally and hurried upstairs. About 20 minutes later, Naledi carried fresh towels past the study. The door stood slightly open. Ayanda sat inside, speaking quietly on the phone. Naledi never intended to eavesdrop, but one sentence stopped her completely. No. She's already signing whatever I place in front of her. Silence followed. Then Ayanda spoke again. The rest won't take much longer. Naledi's heart pounded. Signing what documents? Before she could hear another word, Ayanda suddenly stood. Naledi immediately continued walking. She reached the staircase just as Ayanda stepped into the hallway. Their eyes met again. You seem busy today, Ayanda said. Yes, madam. Good. Her smile lingered. I appreciate loyal employees. Naledi forced herself to smile back. So do I. Ayanda watched her walk away. That evening, Naledi quietly searched the household filing cabinet while organizing invoices. She wasn't trying to invade anyone's privacy. She simply wanted to understand. Near the back of one drawer, she discovered several photocopies bearing Palesa's signature. Some looked recent, others appeared older. One document mentioned property ownership, another referenced financial authority. Naledi frowned. She remembered Palesa mentioning years ago that she disliked signing papers without Tabo present, yet here were several recent signatures. She carefully returned every file exactly as she had found it. Questions multiplied inside her mind. The next morning, Dr. Larato and Cozy arrived for what Ayanda described as a routine wellness visit. Naledi served tea while listening quietly. The doctor asked simple questions. Have you been sleeping? Reasonably well. Any memory problems? Palesa looked confused. I don't think so. Before the conversation continued, Ayanda gently interrupted. She forgets small things almost every day. Dr. Nkosi made notes. Palesa looked surprised. I don't remember that. Ayanda placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. That's exactly what worries us. Naledi watched the doctor's expression. He wasn't convinced. He asked several memory exercises. Palesa answered almost every question correctly. Dates, names, addresses, family history, everything. When the examination ended, Dr. Nkosi smiled politely. She appears mentally sharp. Ayanda laughed softly. Perhaps she was simply having a good day. The doctor nodded without replying. As he left the house, Naledi noticed him glance back toward the front door with quiet uncertainty. Someone else had begun noticing inconsistencies. That realization gave her hope, but only a little, because later that evening she witnessed something that erased every feeling of safety. While collecting laundry from the upstairs corridor, she saw Ayanda unlock the same drawer containing the unlabeled bottle. Ayanda carefully removed it. Then she poured several drops into another medicine container before locking everything away again. She looked around first, as though making certain no one was watching. Naledi quickly stepped backward before she could be seen. Her breathing became shallow. This was no misunderstanding. No ordinary family disagreement. Something deliberate was unfolding, something dangerous. For days she had searched for a logical explanation. Now, watching that mysterious liquid disappear into another bottle, she felt certainty replacing suspicion. Whatever Ayanda was planning had already begun, and unless someone stopped her, Palesa might never realize the danger was sitting quietly beside her every single day. Naledi barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ayanda pouring the clear liquid into another medicine bottle. She replayed the scene over and over, hoping she had misunderstood what she had witnessed. But each memory ended the same way. Ayanda had looked around first. People only checked whether they were being watched when they believed they were doing something that had to remain hidden. Before sunrise, Naledi quietly entered the kitchen to prepare breakfast. To her surprise, Palesa was already there, sitting alone by the window with a cup of warm water. You couldn't sleep either, Naledi asked gently. Palesa smiled. Old memories sometimes wake up before old people do. Naledi forced a smile. She desperately wanted to warn the elderly woman, yet she had no evidence, only suspicions. If she accused Ayanda without proof, she would almost certainly lose her job immediately. Worse still, Ayanda would become even more careful, so Naledi remained silent. That silence weighed heavily on her heart. A few minutes later, Ayanda entered the kitchen. She seemed unusually cheerful. Good morning, everyone. Her voice carried warmth that felt almost unnatural. She prepared coffee for herself while humming softly. Then she turned toward Palesa. I've been thinking. Palesa looked surprised. About what? You haven't been feeling well lately. I'm all right. I still think you need stronger vitamins. Naledi looked up immediately. Ayanda smiled. I'll stop by the pharmacy today. Palesa nodded politely. If you think it's necessary. I do. The conversation lasted less than a minute. Yet Naledi noticed something disturbing. Ayanda never asked whether Palesa wanted different medicine. She simply decided. After breakfast, Tabo called from Cape Town. His voice sounded exhausted. The project has become more complicated than expected. Ayanda spoke with perfect understanding. Stay as long as you need. What about Mother? I'll take excellent care of her. Palesa smiled into the phone. Don't worry about me. I'll be home soon. After ending the call, Tabo returned immediately to discussing business with his partners. He never realized how relieved Ayanda looked after placing the phone on the table. That afternoon, Ayanda left the house alone. Naledi quietly watched her expensive black SUV disappear through the front gate. An uneasy feeling settled inside her. Nearly 2 hours later, Ayanda returned carrying several shopping bags. Most contained groceries. One small white pharmacy bag remained tucked beneath her arm. She carried it upstairs herself. No servant was allowed to touch it. Naledi waited patiently. Nearly an hour later, she found an opportunity. Ayanda had left for the garden to answer another phone call. Her bedroom door remained slightly open. Naledi stepped inside. She had no intention of stealing anything. She only wanted answers. The white pharmacy bag lay inside the wardrobe. Carefully, she opened it. There were ordinary vitamins, blood pressure tablets, pain medication. Then she noticed something else. A small sealed bottle without commercial packaging. No printed label, no manufacturer, only handwritten words. For private use. Her heartbeat quickened. Before she could examine it further, footsteps echoed outside. Naledi quickly returned everything exactly as she had found it. She barely reached the hallway before Ayanda walked back upstairs. Again. She had escaped by seconds. Later that evening, another visitor arrived unexpectedly. It was Sifo Maseko, the family lawyer. He had represented the Dlamini family for more than 15 years. Palesa greeted him warmly. Sifo, it's been too long. He smiled respectfully. It's always wonderful seeing you, Mama Palesa. Ayanda joined them moments later. What brings you here? I need Mr. Tabo's signature on several company documents. He's still in Cape Town. I know. Sifo paused. There are also several property documents requiring Mama Palesa's confirmation. Ayanda answered before Palesa could speak. She's been rather forgetful recently. Sifo looked toward Palesa. Is that true? Palesa smiled politely. I don't believe so. Ayanda laughed softly. She doesn't always remember. Sifo remained silent for a moment. I think I'll wait until Tabo returns. Ayanda's smile faded ever so slightly. As you wish. Naledi noticed everything, especially the disappointment that briefly crossed Ayanda's face. Something about those documents clearly mattered. That night, Naledi quietly searched online using her phone. She typed every description she could remember about the mysterious unlabeled bottle. Most results led nowhere. Finally, one article caught her attention. It described how certain toxic substances could be transferred into ordinary medicine containers without changing the appearance of the liquid. Her stomach tightened. The article also warned that poisoning often succeeded because victims trusted familiar bottles. Naledi immediately locked her phone. Her hands were shaking. She still couldn't prove anything, but the possibility alone terrified her. The following morning, Palesa complained of stomach discomfort after taking her medicine. It'll pass, she whispered. Naledi brought her warm tea. Should we call Dr. Nkosi? No. Palesa smiled weakly. I don't want everyone worrying. Naledi looked toward the medicine bottle resting on the bedside table. Every instinct inside her screamed that something was wrong, but she couldn't simply throw it away. Without evidence, Ayanda would accuse her of interfering with medical treatment. Hours later, Naledi entered the kitchen to prepare lunch. As she reached for spices inside the pantry, she heard voices coming from the service entrance. The back door wasn't fully closed. Someone was speaking outside. She recognized Ayanda immediately. "I paid exactly what you asked." A man's voice answered quietly. "No one will trace it." "You promised." "They won't." "What if someone asks questions?" "They won't know what they're looking for." Naledi slowly moved closer. She couldn't see the man's face, only part of his brown jacket through the narrow gap. Ayanda spoke again. "I only need enough." The man replied calmly, "You already have more than enough." Naledi stopped breathing. Footsteps approached. She quickly stepped away from the door and picked up a tray just as Ayanda entered. "Oh," Ayanda smiled. "Preparing lunch?" "Yes, madam." "Good." Ayanda looked completely relaxed, as though she hadn't just held a secret meeting. Several minutes later, Naledi quietly slipped outside. The mysterious visitor had already disappeared. Only tire tracks remained near the service gate. That evening, she found herself unable to eat. Every conversation she had overheard echoed endlessly inside her mind. Private bottles, hidden conversations, property documents, secret payments. Nothing alone proved guilt. Together, they formed something far darker. After dinner, Palesa sat knitting beside the fireplace. Ayanda watched television. The atmosphere seemed peaceful. Too peaceful. Naledi carried empty cups toward the kitchen. As she passed behind Ayanda's chair, she heard another quiet phone conversation. "It's almost time." A pause. "No." Another pause. "He's completely unaware." Ayanda smiled. "When it's over, everyone will believe it happened naturally." Naledi nearly dropped the tray. She kept walking without looking back. Once safely inside the kitchen, she leaned against the counter. Her breathing became uneven. There was no longer any doubt. Whatever Ayanda had been planning for weeks was approaching. Very soon. Naledi looked toward the family photograph hanging on the opposite wall. It showed young Tabo standing proudly beside his mother many years earlier. She whispered almost silently, "I promised myself I'd never interfere in another family's problems." A tear rolled down her cheek. "But I can't stand by and watch an innocent woman die." For the first time since joining the Dlamini household, Naledi made a decision that would change every life inside the mansion. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost her. Naledi woke before dawn with only one thought filling her mind. She had to protect Palesa. The problem was that protection required proof, and proof remained painfully out of reach. Every suspicious conversation disappeared the moment another person entered the room. Every mysterious bottle was locked away before anyone else could examine it. Ayanda never lost her composure. She never raised her voice. She never behaved in a way that would make outsiders question her. She was patient, careful, methodical, and that made her far more dangerous than someone driven by anger. As the first light spread across Johannesburg, Naledi prepared breakfast while quietly observing the household. Palesa entered the kitchen wearing a pale blue cardigan and smiled warmly, despite looking more tired than usual. "You've been working too hard," Naledi said. Palesa chuckled softly. "My dear, at my age, simply waking up feels like hard work." Naledi laughed politely, but her eyes searched the older woman's face. There were faint shadows beneath her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly while lifting her teacup. Whether it was age stress or something else, Naledi couldn't tell. Ayanda entered a few minutes later, carrying her tablet. I've already arranged Mother's appointments for next week. Palesa looked surprised. What appointments? A complete medical assessment. I don't feel sick. Ayanda smiled kindly. Prevention is always better than treatment. Palesa hesitated. If you think it's necessary. It is. Naledi noticed something. Ayanda never asked for permission. She always presented decisions as acts of love. After breakfast, Ayanda received a phone call. She stepped into the study and closed the door. Naledi quietly continued polishing furniture nearby. A few moments later, raised voices drifted through the wooden door. I said next week. Silence. No, he must stay in Durban until then. Another pause. I'll handle everything here. Naledi frowned. Durban. She thought Tabo's business trip had ended in Cape Town. Several minutes later, Ayanda emerged looking perfectly composed. Oh, she smiled at Naledi. Would you iron Mr. Tabo's blue suits? He'll need them when he comes back. Yes, madam. As Ayanda walked away, Naledi wondered why Tabo's destination had suddenly changed. Later that morning, she called the company receptionist while pretending to confirm a laundry delivery. Is Mr. Dlamini still in Cape Town? She asked casually. The receptionist answered politely. No, ma'am. He left yesterday afternoon for Durban. Naledi thanked her and ended the call. A chill ran through her body. Ayanda had known exactly where Tabo would be. She had also known he would remain away longer than planned. The timing felt deliberate. By lunchtime, another unexpected change occurred. Ayanda announced that 2 longtime servants were taking paid leave for several days. The elderly cook looked confused. I didn't request leave, madame. I requested it for you. But you deserve the rest. Within an hour, both the cook and the gardener had packed their belongings and left. The mansion suddenly felt unusually empty. Only Naledi remained inside with Ayanda and Palesa. She immediately understood why. Fewer witnesses. That evening, Palesa sat reading in the lounge while Naledi dusted nearby. I miss hearing the cook sing, Palesa said quietly. So do I. Palesa looked toward the front gate. The house feels different. Naledi answered honestly. It does. Neither woman mentioned the feeling growing between them. The silence inside the mansion no longer felt peaceful. It felt expectant, almost as if the house itself were waiting. The next morning, Ayanda instructed Naledi to deep clean the upstairs guest rooms. Every room, every room. It may take all day. I know. Naledi understood the assignment immediately. Ayanda wanted her upstairs, far from Palesa. Yet Naledi found excuses to come downstairs every 30 minutes. Fresh towels, cleaning supplies, extra polish, anything to check on the elderly woman. Each time she returned, Ayanda seemed slightly irritated. By afternoon, another visitor arrived. Dr. Larato Nkosi stepped out of his vehicle carrying a medical bag. Naledi hadn't been told he was coming. Neither had Palesa. I'm only here for a routine blood pressure check, the doctor explained. Palesa welcomed him warmly. During the examination, Ayanda remained beside them, answering nearly every question before Palesa could respond. Has she been eating? Not very well. Sleeping? Poorly. Any confusion? Frequently. Dr. Nkosi finally smiled politely. I'd like to hear Mrs. Dlamini answer in her own words. The room became quiet. Palesa answered each question calmly. She described her appetite, her sleep, her daily routine. The doctor listened carefully. When the examination ended, he closed his notebook. Her blood pressure is stable. Ayanda frowned slightly. What about her memory? I don't see anything alarming today. Ayanda laughed softly. Perhaps she simply has good days. Dr. Nkosi looked at Palesa again. I'd like to repeat the assessment another time. Of course, Ayanda replied. After he left, Ayanda's expression hardened. She didn't speak for several minutes. Naledi noticed. Whatever answer Ayanda had hoped for, she hadn't received it. That night, rain began falling across Johannesburg. The sound against the windows filled the mansion with an unusual stillness. Naledi finished washing dishes before checking on Palesa. She found the elderly woman sitting in her bedroom, looking through an old photo album. "Would you like company?" Naledi asked. "I'd love some." They sat together quietly. One photograph showed young Thabo wearing his university graduation gown. "I almost sold my wedding ring to pay his final tuition," Palesa said softly. "You didn't?" "A church friend lent me the money first." She smiled at the memory. "I paid every cent back." Naledi looked at another photograph. "You must be proud of him." "I am." A pause followed. "But success changes people in ways they don't always notice." "You think he's changed?" Palesa considered the question. "No." She gently touched the photograph. "I think life became so noisy that he stopped hearing quiet voices." Naledi felt tears gathering in her eyes. Before she could respond, footsteps echoed outside the bedroom. Ayanda appeared. "There you are." She smiled pleasantly. "Mother, don't stay up too late. We were only talking." "I'm sure." Her eyes shifted briefly toward Naledi. "Naledi, I need you in the kitchen." "Yes, madam." Once downstairs, Ayanda handed her a tray. "Take this herbal tea to Mother before bed." Naledi looked at the steaming cup. "I can." She accepted the tray. As she turned away, something caught her attention. Ayanda reached into her pocket, then paused, apparently reconsidering. She withdrew her empty hand and smiled. "Never mind." Naledi's pulse quickened. What had Ayanda almost done? She carried the untouched tea upstairs. Palesa drank it peacefully. Nothing happened. But Naledi couldn't forget what she had seen. Ayanda had intended to add something. She was certain of it. The following afternoon, Ayanda gathered all the remaining staff in the living room. Her tone remained warm. "I've decided everyone deserves a weekend break." One housekeeper smiled gratefully. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning." "And Naledi?" Ayanda turned toward her. "Naledi will stay." The room fell silent. Someone needs to care for Mother. Every employee accepted the explanation without question. Only Naledi understood what it truly meant. Within 24 hours, nearly everyone would be gone. The mansion would become almost completely isolated. Only 3 people would remain inside: Ayanda, Palesa, and the one maid who already knew far too much. Standing quietly near the staircase, Naledi felt her heartbeat growing faster. She had been waiting for proof. Now she realized time itself was running out. Whatever Ayanda had planned was no longer somewhere in the future. It was approaching with frightening speed, and unless Naledi found a way to stop it, Palesa's next sunrise might also be her last. Saturday morning arrived beneath a gray Johannesburg sky. The mansion, usually filled with the sounds of gardeners, cooks, cleaners, and delivery workers, felt strangely silent. One by one, the remaining staff thanked Ayanda for the unexpected weekend leave and drove away through the front gate. Within half an hour, the enormous house had become almost empty. Only 3 people remained: Palesa, Ayanda, Naledi. Standing in the upstairs hallway, Naledi watched the last employee's car disappear beyond the iron gates. A heavy feeling settled over her chest. She could not explain why, but the silence itself felt dangerous. Ayanda approached from behind. "The house is much calmer now." Naledi forced a polite smile. "Yes, madam." "I dislike unnecessary noise." I understand. Ayanda looked directly into her eyes. I trust you. Those 3 words should have sounded comforting. Instead, they felt like a warning. After breakfast, Ayanda suggested that Palesa spend the morning resting in the sunroom. The fresh air will help you relax. Palesa nodded. I've always liked that room. Large windows surrounded the quiet space overlooking the garden where roses and lavender bloomed. Years earlier, Palesa herself had designed the garden with her late husband. Now she sat alone among the flowers she had planted decades before. Naledi quietly dusted nearby while pretending to organize bookshelves. She refused to let Palesa out of her sight. Around 10 o'clock, Ayanda received another phone call. She stepped outside onto the rear terrace. Naledi slowly opened one of the nearby windows while watering indoor plants. Everything is ready. Silence. No one else is here. Another pause. He won't return until tomorrow night. Naledi stopped watering. Ayanda continued. After today, there won't be any problems left. The call ended. Naledi's hands became cold. Today, not next week, not someday. Today. She immediately returned to the sunroom. Palesa looked up from her knitting. You seem worried. Naledi hesitated. I just have a strange feeling. Palesa smiled gently. Feelings come and go. I hope you're right. The elderly woman reached over and squeezed Naledi's hand. You've been taking care of me more than I deserve. You deserve much more than kindness. Palesa looked surprised. What makes you say that? Naledi searched for words. She wanted to tell the truth. Instead, she whispered, because you've spent your life giving it to everyone else. Palesa smiled with quiet gratitude. Just before lunch, Ayanda announced she would personally prepare soup for Palesa. I found an old recipe online that's supposed to strengthen the immune system. Palesa laughed softly. You don't usually cook. I'm trying to improve. Naledi immediately spoke. I can help. Ayanda shook her head. No, I don't mind. I said no. The firmness lasted only a second before Ayanda smiled again. I want Mother to feel special. Naledi reluctantly stepped back. From the hallway, she watched Ayanda close the kitchen door. A few minutes later, she quietly approached. The small glass panel near the top of the door allowed a limited view inside. Ayanda stood alone at the counter. She removed a tiny bottle from her apron pocket. Colorless liquid. Only a few drops. She added them to a cup standing beside the soup bowl. Not into the soup. Into the tea. Naledi felt every muscle in her body tighten. Her first instinct was to burst into the kitchen. Instead, she forced herself to remain still. Without proof, Ayanda would simply pour everything away and accuse Naledi of imagining things. She needed evidence, real evidence. She hurried silently upstairs. Inside her bedroom, she grabbed her mobile phone. Her hands trembled so badly she nearly dropped it. She checked the battery. 83%. Enough. She switched the camera application into video mode, then disabled all sounds. No shutter, no notifications. Nothing. She returned downstairs as quietly as possible. The kitchen door remained closed. Ayanda was placing the tray together. Soup, bread, tea, medicine. Everything appeared completely ordinary. Naledi quickly positioned herself behind the large pantry wall near the dining room entrance. From there, she could see almost the entire dining area through a narrow opening. More importantly, her phone camera could as well. She pressed record. The red timer began counting upward. Seconds felt like hours. Ayanda carried the tray toward the sunroom. Naledi followed several steps behind, pretending to carry folded tablecloths. She carefully adjusted her position. The phone remained hidden beneath the cloth. The camera lens pointed directly toward the room. Ayanda placed the tray on the small wooden table. I made this especially for you. Palesa smiled warmly. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Everything sounded perfectly loving. To anyone hearing only those words, Ayanda appeared to be an ideal daughter-in-law. Palesa reached for the soup. Ayanda gently stopped her. Drink the tea first. Palesa looked surprised. I usually eat before drinking. This recipe works better that way. Naledi zoomed the camera slightly. Her breathing became shallow. Palesa lifted the cup halfway, then lowered it again. It's very hot, Ayanda smiled. We can wait. Several long minutes passed. No one spoke. Only birds outside broke the silence. Finally, the tea cooled. Ayanda nodded. Now. Palesa slowly reached for the cup again. Before it touched her lips, the front gate buzzer suddenly rang. All three women looked toward the entrance. Ayanda frowned. Who could that be? She walked quickly toward the security monitor. Naledi remained perfectly still. The camera continued recording. A courier stood outside holding several business envelopes. Ayanda hesitated, then pressed the intercom. Leave them with security. But they require a signature. I'll be there. She turned toward Palesa. Don't drink yet. I'll be back in 2 minutes. The moment Ayanda disappeared from the room, Naledi rushed forward. Mama Palesa. The elderly woman looked startled. What is it? Please. Naledi struggled to control her voice. Don't drink that tea. Palesa looked confused. Why? I can't explain yet. Naledi, please trust me. The older woman searched the young maid's frightened face. What happened? Naledi glanced toward the hallway. No time. She carefully picked up the teacup. I'll make you fresh tea. Palesa frowned. Ayanda prepared that herself. I know. Before another word could be spoken, footsteps echoed near the entrance. Ayanda was returning. Naledi had only seconds. She carried the original cup into the kitchen and quietly poured the contents into a clean glass storage bottle she found beside the sink. Every drop. She tightly sealed the lid. Then she rinsed the empty teacup thoroughly. Fresh tea quickly filled another identical cup. When Ayanda entered the kitchen, Naledi stood calmly beside the kettle. What are you doing? The tea became cold. Ayanda looked toward the cup. I see. Her eyes narrowed almost invisibly. But Mother hadn't asked for fresh tea. Naledi smiled politely. I thought she'd enjoy it more while it's warm. For several endless seconds, neither woman moved. Finally, Ayanda smiled. Very thoughtful. But something had changed. She knew. Not everything. Not yet. But enough to become suspicious. That afternoon, the atmosphere inside the mansion grew heavier. Ayanda watched Naledi constantly. Naledi never allowed the small glass bottle to leave her sight. She hid it inside the lining of her cleaning cart beneath folded towels. If her suspicions proved correct, the liquid inside might become the first real piece of evidence. As evening approached, Naledi reviewed the recording in her bedroom. The image was steady. Ayanda could clearly be seen carrying the tray. The conversation was audible, but one crucial moment was missing. The tiny bottle had remained hidden inside the kitchen before the recording began. Useful, yet not enough. Naledi lowered the phone slowly. She finally possessed something, but not the truth she needed. Outside her bedroom door, unknown to her, Ayanda stood silently in the hallway, listening, watching, and smiling. Naledi did not hear the faint footsteps outside her bedroom. She remained focused on the video playing across her phone screen. Again and again, she watched Ayanda place the tray in front of Palesa. Again and again, she listened to the calm voice insisting that the elderly woman drink the tea first. The recording proved one important fact. Ayanda had been unusually determined that Palesa drink from that specific cup. But determination alone was not a crime. Naledi needed something more. Outside the door, Ayanda stood perfectly still. She could not hear every word from inside the room, but she noticed the glow of the phone screen beneath the doorway. After nearly a minute, she quietly walked away without making a sound. Downstairs, she poured herself a glass of water and smiled to herself. Someone was beginning to interfere. That meant she would have to move more quickly. The next morning, Naledi woke with a decision. The mysterious liquid had to be tested. She knew she could not simply walk into a police station carrying an unlabeled bottle and a story based on suspicion. Without evidence, she might be dismissed immediately. There was only one person she believed might help: Dr. Lerato Nkosi. Unlike everyone else, he had already questioned Ayanda's description of Palesa's condition. After breakfast, Naledi approached Ayanda. "Madame, may I visit my brother for an hour this afternoon? He has some documents he needs me to sign." Ayanda looked at her carefully. "You've never mentioned documents before." "They're related to his university application." Ayanda remained silent. Finally, she nodded. "1 hour. Thank you. But return on time." "I will." Naledi lowered her head respectfully, though her heart was racing. She had no intention of visiting her brother. At exactly 2 o'clock, she quietly left the mansion carrying her handbag. Hidden inside, wrapped carefully in a clean cloth, was the small glass bottle containing the tea she had saved. Instead of taking a taxi toward her brother's neighborhood, she traveled directly to Dr. Nkosi's private clinic. The waiting room was nearly empty. The receptionist smiled politely. "Do you have an appointment?" "No." "I'm sorry, Dr. Nkosi is quite busy today." Naledi hesitated. "It's about Mrs. Palesa Dlamini." The receptionist immediately looked more serious. "Please wait." Several minutes later, Dr. Nkosi stepped into the hallway. "Naledi, I'm sorry for coming without notice." He noticed the worry in her face. "Come into my office." Once the door closed, Naledi placed the small bottle carefully on the desk. "I need your help." The doctor looked at the liquid. "What is this?" "I believe it may have been given to Mama Palesa." "You believe?" Naledi nodded. "I can't prove anything." She described everything she had witnessed over the previous weeks: the strange medicine bottles, the conversations, the missing documents, the insistence that Palesa drink only one particular cup of tea. She admitted she had secretly replaced the drink before Palesa consumed it. Dr. Nkosi listened without interrupting. When she finished, the room remained quiet. Finally, he spoke. "These are serious accusations." "I know. Do you have any evidence besides your observations?" Naledi showed him the video. He watched carefully. When it ended, he leaned back in his chair. "The recording raises questions, but not enough." "No." Naledi lowered her eyes. "I was afraid you'd say that." Dr. Nkosi looked at the bottle once more. "I can't perform laboratory testing here." Naledi felt hope slipping away. "But—" She looked up. "I know someone who can." He wrote a name and address on a small card. "This laboratory is independent. Tell them I referred you." "Will they help?" "If the sample contains something unusual, they'll find it." Naledi thanked him repeatedly before leaving the clinic. She traveled across the city to the laboratory. The technician accepted the sealed bottle after Dr. Nkosi confirmed the referral by phone. "How long will the analysis take?" Naledi asked. 24 to 48 hours. Her heart sank. "Is there any way to make it faster?" The technician shook his head apologetically. "I'm afraid not." Naledi thanked him and hurried back toward the mansion. By the time she arrived, nearly 55 minutes had passed. She entered through the service door. Ayanda stood waiting in the kitchen. "You're late." Naledi checked the clock. Only 3 minutes. I'm sorry. The taxi was delayed. Ayanda studied her face. What documents took so long? They needed additional signatures. I see. The answer seemed to satisfy her. Or perhaps it didn't. Naledi couldn't tell. That evening, Tabo called again. I'm finally coming home tomorrow. Palesa's face brightened immediately. I've missed you. I've missed you too, Mama. Ayanda smiled sweetly into the phone. We'll have dinner waiting. After the call ended, Palesa quietly began planning her son's favorite dessert. Ayanda interrupted gently. Don't tire yourself. I only want to bake. I'll order one from the bakery. Palesa simply nodded. Naledi watched another small joy disappear. Later that night, Ayanda entered Palesa's bedroom carrying a tray. I brought your evening medicine. Naledi happened to be changing bed linens nearby. I can help Mother with that, she offered. Ayanda smiled. Thank you, but I've already done it. She waited beside the bed while Palesa swallowed the tablets. Naledi noticed something unusual. The medicine bottle looked different again. After Ayanda left, Naledi quietly examined the bedside table. Another unlabeled container had replaced yesterday's. Someone was changing the bottles frequently. The following morning, the laboratory had not yet called. Naledi checked her phone repeatedly. Nothing. Meanwhile, Tabo's return filled the house with excitement. Fresh flowers decorated the dining room. The chef had returned from leave. Extra security guards arrived outside. Everything looked normal again. Almost. When Tabo entered the mansion shortly before sunset, Palesa embraced him warmly. My son. I've missed you. For a few precious minutes, genuine happiness returned to the house. Tabo noticed she seemed thinner. Mama, are you eating properly? Before she answered, Ayanda spoke. I've been trying. Palesa smiled gently. I'm fine. Tabo kissed her forehead. We'll spend more time together. Naledi silently hoped he meant it. During dinner, conversation flowed easily. Business, travel, community projects. Then Ayanda casually laughed. You should have seen Mother yesterday. Palesa looked up. What happened? You almost drank cold tea because you forgot it was sitting in front of you. Tabo chuckled lightly. Palesa forced a smile. I was distracted. Ayanda reached over and squeezed her hand. It happens. Naledi noticed something alarming. Every small story strengthened the image Ayanda had carefully created. Forgetful, confused, dependent. The picture was becoming more believable with every passing day. Just as dinner ended, Naledi's phone vibrated inside her apron pocket. One message. Unknown number. Your laboratory results are ready. Please collect them as soon as possible. Naledi's heartbeat accelerated. Whatever was inside that report could change everything, or destroy the only chance she had to save Palesa. Across the dining table, Ayanda noticed the brief glance toward Naledi's phone. Their eyes met for only a second. Ayanda smiled politely. But behind that smile, Naledi sensed, something had shifted. It was the expression of someone who had begun asking herself a dangerous question. What exactly did the maid know? And how far was she willing to go to find out? Naledi hardly touched her breakfast the next morning. The message from the laboratory had remained in her thoughts all night. She wanted to collect the report immediately, but leaving the mansion again so soon would attract unnecessary attention. Ayanda had already questioned her absence the previous afternoon. A second unexpected trip might convince her that something was wrong. Patience, Naledi reminded herself. She needed patience. Across the dining table, Tabo chatted happily about a new housing development his company had secured outside Pretoria. His enthusiasm filled the room, and for a brief moment, Palesa looked genuinely relaxed. She listened with the same pride she had shown when he was a schoolboy, describing his first science project. "You always dreamed of building homes," she said. Tabo smiled. "And you always believed I could." Ayanda reached across the table and gently squeezed his arm. "You've worked incredibly hard." He nodded gratefully. "I couldn't have done it without both of you." Palesa lowered her eyes. The words should have brought her comfort. Instead, they reminded her how distant her relationship with her son had quietly become. After breakfast, Tabo left for another meeting at the company's headquarters. "I'll be back before dinner," he promised. As soon as his car disappeared through the front gate, the warmth inside the mansion vanished once again. Ayanda turned toward Naledi. "I need you to organize Mother's study." "Yes, madam. There are many old documents that should probably be discarded." Palesa looked surprised. "They're only family papers." Ayanda smiled. "Exactly. Most of them are no longer necessary." Palesa hesitated. "I'd rather keep them." Ayanda's smile remained unchanged. "We'll simply sort them together." Naledi followed them into the study. The room was filled with decades of memories, old photographs, property deeds, letters, certificates, newspaper articles celebrating Tabo's achievements. As Palesa slowly opened one cabinet, she carefully lifted a faded envelope. This was Tabo's first scholarship letter. Her face brightened. "I still remember the day it arrived." Ayanda barely glanced at it. "We don't need to keep everything." Before Palesa could respond, Ayanda quietly removed several folders from the bottom drawer and placed them into a separate box. Naledi noticed the labels: property, trust, inheritance. She immediately became alert. Palesa reached toward the box. "What are those?" "Old legal papers. I'd like to look at them." Ayanda gently closed the lid. "There isn't any need." The answer came too quickly, too firmly. Naledi pretended to dust the bookshelf while memorizing every movement. Something important had just been separated from the rest of the files. That afternoon, Ayanda announced she would attend a charity luncheon for several hours. "I'll return before 5. Naledi felt hope rise immediately. As soon as Ayanda's vehicle left the driveway, she approached Palesa. "Mama, would you mind if I went into town for a little while?" "Of course not. I'll be back quickly." "Take your time." Naledi thanked her and hurried toward the taxi stop. Less than 40 minutes later, she arrived at the independent laboratory. The technician recognized her immediately. "Please come with me." Inside a small consultation room, he handed her a sealed envelope. Naledi stared at it without opening it. "What did you find?" "I'm not authorized to interpret results." "Please." The technician hesitated. "I can only tell you that the laboratory detected substances that should not normally be present in a simple herbal tea." Naledi's pulse quickened. "What kind of substances?" "You'll need to discuss that with a physician." Her fingers trembled as she thanked him and left the building. Outside, she sat on a nearby bench before opening the envelope. The report contained several unfamiliar medical terms. She understood very little, but one sentence had been highlighted. The sample contains a sedative compound inconsistent with ordinary food or beverage preparation. Naledi read the line 3 times. Sedative. Not poison, but certainly not tea. Her first feeling was relief. Palesa had not consumed deadly poison that day. Her second feeling was even more disturbing. If someone had secretly added a powerful sedative once, what might they add next? She immediately traveled to Dr. Nkozi's clinic. He invited her into his office after reading the report carefully. "This confirms your suspicions." Naledi swallowed nervously. "What does it mean?" "The substance could make an elderly person extremely drowsy." "Could it affect memory?" Dr. Nkozi looked up. Yes. Her heart stopped. It may cause confusion, poor coordination, excessive sleepiness, and temporary memory problems, especially in older adults. Naledi felt every strange event suddenly connect: the dizziness, the fatigue, the forgotten conversations, the stumbling. They've been making her appear mentally unwell. Dr. Nkosi slowly nodded. That is one possibility. Naledi leaned forward. What should we do? He became thoughtful. This laboratory report is important, but it doesn't prove who added the substance. She lowered her eyes. I know. If this goes to the police today, the defense will argue contamination. Naledi sighed. So, we're still missing proof. We need evidence connecting someone directly to the act. She left the clinic carrying both the report and growing determination. The truth was finally taking shape. Ayanda hadn't been trying to kill Palesa immediately. She had been weakening her, creating symptoms that looked like age-related decline. If everyone believed Palesa was confused, then any future document she signed could be questioned. Any accident could seem believable. Any sudden illness could appear natural. By the time Naledi reached the mansion, the afternoon sun had begun to fade. She slipped the laboratory report inside the lining of her handbag before entering. Ayanda had already returned. You're back. Yes, madam. You were gone longer than expected. The buses were delayed. Ayanda smiled politely. I hope everything was settled. It was. For several seconds they looked at one another. Neither woman believed the other's explanation. That evening, Sifo Maseko unexpectedly visited again. I finally have all the revised property documents, he announced. Tabo welcomed him into the study. Palesa joined them a few minutes later. Ayanda quietly took a seat beside her. Sifo arranged several papers across the desk. I'll explain each page before anyone signs. Ayanda interrupted gently. We're all family. Sifo smiled professionally. I still prefer explaining every document. Naledi served coffee while listening carefully. One document transferred management authority over several investment accounts. Another updated trustees. A third required Palesa's acknowledgement regarding family assets. As Sifo began reading, Ayanda checked the time repeatedly. She seemed impatient, very impatient. Halfway through the meeting, Tabo received an urgent business call. I'm sorry. He stood. I need 10 minutes. No problem, Sifo replied. The moment Tabo stepped outside, Ayanda leaned toward the lawyer. Perhaps mother can sign while he's away. Sifo shook his head. I'd rather wait. It will save time. I'm in no hurry. Ayanda's smile faded for only an instant. Naledi noticed. So did Palesa. For the first time in many weeks, the elderly woman looked directly at her daughter-in-law with quiet curiosity, almost as though she too had begun noticing the pattern. After Sifo left that evening without collecting any signatures, Ayanda remained unusually silent during dinner. She answered questions politely. She smiled when appropriate, but her mind seemed elsewhere. Late that night, Naledi walked past the downstairs office while carrying folded laundry. The door was not completely closed. Inside, Ayanda stood speaking on the phone. Her voice was calm. The delay changes nothing. A pause. No. Another pause. I'll find another way. Naledi felt a chill. Another way. Those 3 words echoed through her mind long after she returned upstairs. The laboratory report had disrupted part of Ayanda's plan, but it hadn't stopped it. If anything, it had forced her to become even more dangerous. Naledi carefully locked her bedroom door before placing the report beneath a loose floorboard she had discovered months earlier while cleaning. For now, it was the safest hiding place she knew. As she extinguished the bedside lamp, only one thought remained. The game had changed. She finally possessed evidence that someone was secretly drugging Palesa. Now she needed to catch the person responsible before another way became something far worse than a cup of tea. The atmosphere inside the Dlamini mansion changed noticeably after Saifo left without collecting a single signature. Ayanda hid her disappointment behind the same graceful smile she always wore, but Naledi could sense the frustration beneath it. Small details betrayed her composure. She answered questions more sharply than usual. She checked her phone constantly. Twice that morning, Naledi caught her staring toward Palesa's bedroom with an expression that disappeared the instant someone looked back. Something had interrupted her plan, but it had not ended it. Naledi became even more cautious. The laboratory report remained hidden beneath the loose floorboard in her bedroom. She checked its hiding place every night before sleeping, terrified that someone might somehow discover it. More importantly, she no longer allowed Palesa to eat or drink anything without quietly watching how it had been prepared. It was exhausting. But she refused to take chances. 3 days later, Dr. Nkosi telephoned the mansion. Naledi happened to answer. "Good afternoon. This is Dr. Lerato Nkosi. I'd like to schedule another examination for Mrs. Dlamini." Naledi glanced toward the hallway before lowering her voice. "Tomorrow morning would be good. I'll come personally." After ending the call, she informed Ayanda. The younger woman smiled politely. "Excellent." Yet for just a fraction of a second, annoyance flashed across her face. The next morning, Dr. Nkosi arrived carrying a small medical case. Unlike previous visits, he asked to speak with Palesa alone. "I'd like a private conversation first." Ayanda laughed softly. "Of course." She left the room without protest. Naledi quietly closed the door behind her. The doctor spent nearly 40 minutes speaking with Palesa. He asked detailed questions about her daily routine, her meals, her medication, her sleep, her dizziness. When he finally emerged, his expression was thoughtful. "I'd like to review all current prescriptions." Ayanda immediately produced several medicine bottles. Dr. Nkosi examined each one carefully. "This label has been replaced." Ayanda shrugged. "The pharmacy changed the packaging." "So did this one." "I suppose so." The doctor made no comment. Instead, he placed the bottles back on the table. "I'll send updated recommendations later this week." As he walked toward the front door, he briefly met Naledi's eyes. His almost invisible nod carried a clear message. He had noticed something. That afternoon, Naledi secretly called him. "Did you find anything?" "I found inconsistencies." "What kind?" "The medication labels don't match the pharmacy records." Naledi's heartbeat quickened. "So, someone changed them." "I can't say that yet. But I can say they deserve further investigation." Hope returned to Naledi for the first time in days. She was no longer the only person questioning what was happening. Unfortunately, Ayanda seemed to sense the growing danger as well. That evening, she announced surprising news. "I've arranged a weekend family gathering." Palesa looked confused. "What are we celebrating?" "Nothing." Ayanda smiled brightly. "I simply thought everyone should spend time together." Tabo immediately agreed. "That's a wonderful idea." Relatives began arriving 2 days later. Tabo's cousins, an elderly aunt, several close family friends. The mansion filled once again with laughter and conversation. To outsiders, the Dlaminis looked like the perfect family. Ayanda moved gracefully among the guests, serving food, greeting everyone warmly, and constantly checking on Palesa. "You look tired, mother." "I'm fine." "Please don't overexert yourself." Guests smiled approvingly. "What a caring daughter-in-law," one woman whispered. Naledi overheard the comment. Her stomach tightened. Ayanda's performance was flawless. No one would ever believe the truth simply by watching her. During lunch, another carefully staged moment unfolded. Palesa accidentally dropped a serving spoon while reaching for vegetables. Before she could pick it up, Ayanda rushed forward. "See?" She laughed gently. "I keep telling everyone Mother needs more rest." Several relatives nodded sympathetically. One elderly uncle sighed. "Aging catches all of us." Palesa forced a smile. It was only a spoon, but the damage had already been done. Another tiny story. Another piece added to the picture Ayanda had been creating for months. Later that afternoon, Naledi carried empty glasses toward the kitchen. As she passed the library, she heard voices inside. The door stood slightly open. Sifo Maseko had arrived unexpectedly. "I need one additional signature," he explained. Tabo looked surprised. "I thought everything was finished." One document was missing. Ayanda immediately stepped closer. "We can finish today." Sifo removed a single folder. "It concerns the family trust." Palesa reached toward the document. Before she could read it, Ayanda spoke gently. "It's the same paperwork we discussed." Sifo looked up. "I haven't explained it yet." Ayanda smiled. "Of course." He began reading each paragraph carefully. Naledi remained outside, pretending to polish a nearby cabinet. Halfway through the explanation, Palesa frowned. "This doesn't sound familiar." Sifo nodded. "It isn't. I've never seen this version," Ayanda answered smoothly. "The wording was updated." Sifo turned another page. "The changes are significant." Ayanda's smile stiffened. "They're only technical." Sifo disagreed politely. "No." He closed the folder. "I think everyone should have independent legal advice before signing." Silence filled the room. Thabo looked puzzled. "Is that necessary?" "I believe so." Ayanda lowered her eyes. "If that's your recommendation." Although her voice remained calm, Naledi noticed her fingers tightening around the arm of her chair. Another plan had failed. That night, long after the guests had gone to bed, Naledi walked downstairs for a glass of water. A faint light glowed beneath the study door. She stopped. Ayanda was inside, quietly speaking on the phone. "No." A pause followed. "I can't wait much longer." Another pause. "The lawyer keeps interfering." Naledi moved closer. She could hear every word now. "Oh, if paperwork won't solve it." Silence. Then came the sentence that made her blood run cold. "Then an accident will." Naledi froze. She pressed one trembling hand against the wall. Inside the study, Ayanda continued speaking. "No one questions accidents involving elderly people." Another pause, especially when everyone already believes she's becoming confused. Naledi felt as though the air had disappeared from her lungs. This was no longer suspicion, no longer hidden manipulation. Ayanda herself had admitted the next step. Accident. The word echoed endlessly inside Naledi's mind. She carefully backed away before the conversation ended. Every instinct told her to wake Tabo immediately. But without a recording, without direct evidence, Ayanda would simply deny everything, and she would know someone had been listening. Naledi returned quietly to her room. She locked the door. Then she retrieved the laboratory report from beneath the loose floorboard. For several minutes, she stared at it. One report, one incomplete video, several observations. Still not enough. She sat on the edge of the bed until sunrise, unable to sleep. One terrifying realization had become impossible to ignore. Ayanda had abandoned patience. She was no longer waiting for signatures. She was preparing something far more permanent. If Naledi failed to stop her now, the next incident inside the Dlamini mansion would not be mistaken medication. It would be a carefully planned accident, and everyone, including Tabo, might believe it had happened naturally. Naledi did not wait for morning. As the first rays of sunlight touched the mansion, she left her bedroom carrying only one thought. She needed help. Real help, not guesses, not suspicions. Someone with authority had to know what was happening before Ayanda created the accident she had spoken about. Yet exposing everything without solid evidence could still backfire. If Ayanda realized she was being watched, she would simply change her plans again. Naledi decided to speak with only one person, Dr. Lerato Nkosi. Instead of calling him, she sent a short message. "It is more urgent than before. Please meet me today." Less than a minute later, her phone vibrated. "My clinic. Noon." She quietly slipped the phone back into her apron just as Ayanda entered the dining room. "Good morning." "Good morning, madam." Ayanda studied Naledi for a brief moment. "You look tired." "I didn't sleep well." "You should take better care of yourself." The concern sounded genuine. It always did. After breakfast, Tabo left for another series of meetings across Johannesburg. Before leaving, he hugged his mother. "I'll be home early tonight." "I'll be waiting," Palesa replied warmly. As soon as he drove away, Ayanda suggested another activity. "Mother, let's reorganize your bedroom today." Palesa smiled politely. "If you'd like." Naledi followed them upstairs, carrying empty storage boxes. For nearly 2 hours, Ayanda directed everything. Old clothes were folded. Drawers were emptied. Photographs were sorted. Every decision passed through her. At one point, Palesa opened a small wooden jewelry box. Inside lay her late husband's wedding ring, an old wristwatch, and several handwritten letters. She gently touched the ring. He never took this off. Her eyes filled with quiet emotion. Ayanda barely glanced at the keepsakes. "We should place those in storage. I'd rather keep them here." "They're perfectly safe downstairs." Palesa slowly closed the box. "I feel closer to him when they're nearby." For the first time that day, Ayanda did not argue. She simply smiled. "As you wish." Naledi noticed something strange. Ayanda had stopped insisting. That almost never happened. Around 11 o'clock, Ayanda received another phone call and stepped onto the balcony. Naledi quietly continued folding blankets beside Palesa. The elderly woman suddenly spoke in a whisper. "Naledi." "Yes." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." Palesa looked toward the open balcony door to make sure Ayanda remained outside. "Do you think I've become forgetful?" Naledi's heart tightened. "No." "You answered very quickly." "Because I know the answer." Palesa sighed. "Sometimes I wonder if everyone else sees something I don't." Naledi knelt beside her chair. "I've watched you every day." Palesa looked into her eyes. "You've never frightened me." "You remember names. You remember dates. You remember conversations." Naledi gently took her hand. "You are not imagining things." Tears gathered in Palesa's eyes. "Thank you." "It isn't kindness," Naledi spoke carefully. "It's the truth." Before they could continue, Ayanda returned. "What are you two whispering about?" Palesa smiled. "Old memories." Ayanda nodded pleasantly. "I hope they're happy ones." The conversation ended, but something had changed. For the first time in weeks, Palesa no longer looked completely uncertain about herself. Just before noon, Naledi asked permission to buy cleaning supplies. Ayanda agreed without hesitation. "Don't be long." "I won't." Naledi went directly to Dr. Nkosi's clinic. Inside his office, she described everything she had overheard the previous night, including the single word that refused to leave her mind: accident. The doctor's expression became increasingly serious. When exactly did she say this? Last night. Were you recording? Naledi lowered her head. No. He sighed quietly. I wish you had been. So do I. For several moments, neither spoke. Finally, Dr. Nkosi leaned forward. We need to change our strategy. Naledi listened carefully. Stop trying to prove what already happened. She frowned. I don't understand. We prevent what comes next. How? If Ayanda believes no one suspects her, she'll eventually act. Naledi slowly nodded. And when she does, we document everything. The idea frightened her. You mean wait? We stay prepared. He handed her a small digital voice recorder. It was no larger than a keychain. It records continuously for nearly 12 hours. Naledi stared at it. I've never used one. It's simple. He demonstrated the switch. Hide it somewhere close whenever you believe something important may happen. Naledi carefully placed it inside her handbag. This could save her life. It could. Before she left, Dr. Nkosi added one final warning. Do not confront Ayanda. I won't. And don't let her know you're afraid. Naledi nodded. I understand. When she returned to the mansion, everything appeared peaceful. Too peaceful. Palesa sat reading near the fireplace. Ayanda arranged flowers in the dining room. Soft music played throughout the house. Anyone walking inside would have believed harmony had returned. Late that afternoon, Sifo Maseko unexpectedly stopped by again. I was nearby, he explained. I wanted to drop off revised copies. Ayanda accepted the envelope. I'll give them to Tabo. Sifo smiled politely. I'd rather hand them to him myself. He'll be home later. I can wait. Ayanda hesitated. That won't be necessary. Sifo looked at her calmly. I don't mind. An awkward silence followed. Finally, Ayanda stepped aside. As you wish. Naledi noticed another subtle victory. Sifo no longer seemed willing to leave sensitive documents in Ayanda's hands. As evening approached, Tabo finally returned home. Everyone gathered for dinner. Conversation remained light until Palesa suddenly paused halfway through her meal. She pressed one hand against her forehead. Are you all right? Tabo asked. I feel dizzy. Ayanda immediately stood. I'll get your medicine. No, Naledi said quickly. I already brought water. Ayanda looked toward her. I said I'll get the medicine. I think she should rest first. For one tense moment, both women stood motionless. Tabo looked between them. Let's not overwhelm Mama. He helped Palesa stand. I'll take her upstairs. Ayanda smiled politely. Of course. Naledi quietly exhaled. Without realizing it, Tabo had interrupted whatever Ayanda intended to do. Later that night, Naledi hid the digital recorder beneath a decorative table near the upstairs hallway, where voices carried clearly between the bedrooms and the study. She switched it on. A tiny green light flashed once, then disappeared. Exactly as Dr. Nkosi had promised. No one could tell it was recording. Just after midnight, footsteps echoed through the silent hallway. Naledi remained awake behind her bedroom door. She heard someone walking slowly toward Palesa's room, then stopping. A handle turned gently. The bedroom door opened. Several seconds passed. Another quiet sound followed, like glass being placed carefully onto wood. Then the footsteps retreated. Naledi waited until silence returned. Only then did she step into the hallway. Palesa's bedroom door stood slightly open. Inside, the elderly woman slept peacefully. On the bedside table sat a fresh glass of water. Naledi frowned. She was certain it hadn't been there earlier. Very carefully, she picked up the glass. Something about it felt terribly wrong. She wrapped it in a clean towel without waking Palesa, then replaced it with another glass filled from the bathroom tap. As she carried the original glass back toward her room, one thought echoed relentlessly inside her mind. Tonight, Ayanda had made her move again. The only question now was whether the hidden recorder had captured enough to reveal the truth before it was too late. Naledi locked her bedroom door before placing the wrapped glass on her desk. For several seconds, she simply stared at it. It looked completely ordinary. Clear water, no unusual smell, no visible color. Nothing that would make anyone question it. Yet, she trusted her instincts. Someone had entered Palesa's room after midnight. Someone had quietly left that glass beside the bed. And only one person in the mansion had both the opportunity and the motive. She carefully sealed the glass inside a clean plastic food container before hiding it beneath folded blankets in her wardrobe. Then she looked at the small digital recorder. It was still running. She resisted the urge to listen immediately. If Ayanda noticed her staying awake until dawn, she might become suspicious. Instead, Naledi forced herself into bed. Sleep never came. At sunrise, the mansion slowly returned to life. Palesa appeared in the dining room looking unusually refreshed. "I slept better than I have in weeks," she said. Tabo smiled. "That's wonderful." Ayanda poured coffee with effortless grace. "I told you the new routine would help." Naledi quietly served breakfast while observing every movement. Palesa reached for the replacement glass of water Naledi had placed beside the bed during the night. It remained untouched. Relief washed over her. If Ayanda had added anything to the original glass, Palesa had never consumed it. After breakfast, Tabo left for another board meeting. "I'll be back before sunset." "We'll be waiting," Ayanda replied warmly. The front gate closed behind his vehicle. Almost immediately, Ayanda turned toward Naledi. "I'll be working in my office this morning." "Yes, madam." "I don't want to be disturbed." "Of course." Naledi nodded respectfully. Inside, however, she was already planning her next move. The recorder had captured the entire night. She needed to hear it. Around 10 o'clock, she carried laundry into the detached utility room behind the garage. The old washing machines were loud enough to hide almost any sound. She locked the door, then switched off the recorder. With trembling hands, she plugged in a pair of earphones. The recording began with hours of silence, occasional footsteps, a door closing, running water, nothing important. She almost lost hope. Then, just after midnight, the audio changed. Soft footsteps. A bedroom door opening. The faint sound of glass touching wood. Naledi leaned closer. A woman's voice whispered, "So you'll sleep peacefully." It was unmistakably Ayanda. A second voice followed, barely audible, almost a whisper to herself. "Tomorrow will be much easier." The recording ended with retreating footsteps. Naledi removed the earphones slowly. Her heart pounded. It still wasn't enough to prove what had been inside the glass, but it proved something equally important. Ayanda had secretly entered Palesa's bedroom during the night without anyone's knowledge. She immediately copied the recording onto her phone. Then she stored the original file on a small memory card hidden inside her shoe. She was beginning to think like someone protecting evidence. Just before noon, her phone vibrated. Dr. Nkosi. "I've arranged testing for the water sample." Naledi lowered her voice. "When?" "This afternoon." "I'll bring it." "Come alone." She quietly requested permission from Ayanda. "My brother called again. He forgot one of the documents yesterday." Ayanda looked irritated. "Another trip?" "I'm sorry." A long silence followed. Finally, Ayanda nodded. 1 hour. Naledi thanked her and hurried away. This time she carried the sealed water sample instead of the tea. At the clinic, Dr. Nkosi accepted the container immediately. You did the right thing. I replaced the glass before Palesa woke up. He nodded approvingly. If anything unusual is present, we'll know. How long? Probably tomorrow. Naledi sighed. Everything takes time. It does. He looked directly at her. But every day we delay is another day Palesa remains alive. Those words strengthened her resolve. Before leaving, Naledi played the midnight recording. Dr. Nkosi listened carefully. When it finished, he folded his arms. This is significant, but still incomplete. Yes. He paused. However, Naledi waited. If we combine this recording with laboratory evidence... His sentence remained unfinished. Neither needed to say the rest. Together, the pieces were beginning to fit. Back at the mansion, Ayanda seemed unusually cheerful. I have wonderful news. Palesa smiled politely. What is it? I've organized a family picnic this weekend. Sabo, who had just returned home, looked delighted. That sounds perfect, Palesa agreed. It will be nice spending time together. Only Naledi felt uneasy. Ayanda rarely organized events without a reason, especially after several failed attempts involving legal documents. That evening, while preparing picnic supplies, Naledi noticed Ayanda placing several medicine bottles into a travel bag. She frowned. Are those necessary? Ayanda smiled. Mother sometimes forgets her medication. I can pack it later. I've already done it. Again. Ayanda insisted on handling the medicine herself. The pattern never changed. Later that night, Sifo Maseko called Tabo. Naledi happened to answer before passing the phone upstairs. She overheard only a single sentence. I really think your mother should have an independent medical evaluation before signing anything. Tabo sounded confused. I don't understand why everyone is suddenly worried. Sifo answered calmly. Because careful people ask questions. Those words lingered in Naledi's mind long after the conversation ended. She wasn't alone anymore. Dr. Nkosi was asking questions. Sifo was asking questions. Even Palesa had begun questioning herself less. Only Tabo remained unaware. The following afternoon, the family left for the picnic at a private nature reserve outside Johannesburg. The weather was beautiful. Children from neighboring families played nearby. Birds circled above the trees. The setting looked peaceful. Yet Naledi couldn't relax. She stayed close to Palesa throughout the afternoon. Whenever Ayanda offered food or drinks, Naledi quietly found reasons to serve them instead. Ayanda noticed, several times. Their eyes met repeatedly. No words were exchanged. None were necessary. Each woman understood the other was watching. As sunset approached, everyone gathered near a wooden viewing platform overlooking a small lake. The railing was old but sturdy. Families leaned against it while taking photographs. Palesa stood admiring the water. Thabo walked a few steps away to answer another business call. Naledi bent briefly to pick up a dropped napkin. When she looked up again, she froze. Ayanda was standing directly behind Palesa. One hand rested lightly against the elderly woman's back, not supporting her, positioning herself. The expression on Ayanda's face was completely different from the one she showed the world. Cold, focused, calculated. For one terrifying second, Naledi realized exactly what an accident could look like. She dropped everything and ran. Palesa! Her shout echoed across the lakeside. Every head turned, including Ayanda's. The moment shattered. But what Naledi had interrupted, she feared it had only just begun. Naledi's shout echoed across the quiet lakeside. Palesa! Every conversation stopped. Children stopped running. Several relatives turned toward the wooden viewing platform in confusion. Ayanda withdrew her hand immediately and stepped backward with remarkable composure. "What happened?" Thabo asked as he hurried back from his phone call. Naledi reached Palesa, breathing heavily. I thought the railing moved." Everyone looked toward the wooden barrier. One of Tabo's cousins leaned against it firmly. "It seems solid." Naledi forced herself to nod. "I'm sorry. I reacted without thinking." Ayanda smiled sympathetically. "You were worried about Mother." Her tone carried kindness. If only everyone cared so much. Several relatives nodded approvingly. Only Naledi understood what had just happened. If she had accused Ayanda in that moment, no one would have believed her. There had been no push, no visible assault, only a hand resting lightly against an elderly woman's back. Ayanda had once again stayed just inside the boundaries of innocence. The picnic ended shortly before sunset. On the drive back to Johannesburg, Palesa quietly reached across the back seat and squeezed Naledi's hand. "Thank you." Naledi looked surprised. "For what?" "For calling my name." She smiled gently. "I don't know why, but I suddenly felt uncomfortable standing there." Naledi felt a chill. Palesa had sensed it too. She simply hadn't understood why. Back at the mansion, everyone retired early after the long day. Just before midnight, Naledi's phone vibrated. A message from Dr. Nkosi. "The laboratory results are ready. Come first thing tomorrow morning." Naledi barely slept. By dawn, she had already decided exactly what she would do. After breakfast, she asked Ayanda for permission to collect additional cleaning supplies from town. Ayanda looked at her carefully. "You've been leaving the house quite often. The supplier has a discount this week." A brief silence followed. Finally, Ayanda nodded. "Be quick." Naledi thanked her and left immediately. At the clinic, Dr. Nkosi was already waiting. Without saying a word, he handed her a sealed report. She opened it with trembling fingers. Several scientific terms covered the first page. Her eyes moved directly to the conclusion. The water sample contains the same sedative compound previously identified in the tea sample. Naledi slowly lowered the paper. "It was in the water too," Dr. Nkosi nodded. "The concentration is even higher." She stared at him. What would have happened if Palesa had drunk it? The symptoms would likely include extreme drowsiness, confusion, poor balance, slowed reactions, and increased risk of falling. Naledi felt her stomach tighten. An accident. The doctor met her eyes. "Exactly." For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Naledi whispered, "She's trying to make a fall look natural." Dr. Nkosi folded his hands. "We now have laboratory evidence from 2 separate samples. But we still don't have direct proof that Ayanda added the substance." "I know." He leaned forward. "However, I think it's time someone else becomes involved." "You mean the police?" "Not yet." Naledi looked confused. "Then who?" "Sifo Maseko, the lawyer. He already has concerns about the legal documents," Dr. Nkosi continued calmly. "If he understands someone may be deliberately impairing Palesa's judgment, he'll know exactly how serious this is." Naledi agreed immediately. Less than an hour later, Sifo arrived at the clinic. He listened carefully as Dr. Nkosi explained the laboratory findings. Naledi then described everything she had witnessed over the previous weeks: the hidden medicine bottles, the secret conversations, the midnight visit, the recording, the attempted tea, the water beside the bed. When she finished, Sifo remained silent for a long time. Finally, he spoke. "I've suspected something wasn't right." Naledi looked at him hopefully. "What made you suspicious?" He removed a folder from his briefcase. "About 6 weeks ago, someone submitted documents requesting significant changes to the Dlamini family trust." Naledi frowned. "Who submitted them?" Ayanda. And she claimed Palesa had already agreed. Naledi's heartbeat quickened. But she hadn't. Sifo nodded. That's why I refused to proceed without personally speaking to her. He opened another file. There were also requests to transfer authority over several investment accounts. Dr. Nkosi looked concerned. To whom? Sifo answered quietly. To Ayanda. The room fell completely silent. Everything suddenly made sense. The attempts to make Palesa appear forgetful, the repeated medical discussions, the mysterious documents, the pressure to sign paperwork, the sedatives, the planned accident. Each piece belonged to the same puzzle. Sifo closed the folder. I believe we now have enough reason to begin protecting Mrs. Dlamini immediately. Naledi asked the question that frightened her most. What if Ayanda acts tonight? Sifo became thoughtful. We don't confront her. Why not? Because she still doesn't know we understand her plan. He looked at both of them. That gives us one advantage. By early afternoon, they agreed on a strategy. Sifo would arrange for additional legal safeguards, preventing any financial changes without independent medical confirmation. Dr. Nkosi would schedule a comprehensive neurological assessment for Palesa. Naledi would continue watching the mansion while quietly documenting everything. Nobody would alert Ayanda. Not yet. When Naledi returned home, she found Tabo sitting alone in the garden. He smiled warmly. You've been working very hard lately. She nodded politely. I'm only doing my job. He looked toward the flowers. Mama says you're like family. Naledi hesitated. There was so much she wanted to tell him. Instead, she simply said, She's a wonderful woman. I know. Tabo smiled proudly. I owe her everything. Naledi lowered her eyes. If only he truly understood how much danger his mother was facing. That evening, dinner passed quietly. Ayanda appeared unusually relaxed. She laughed with Tabo. She asked Palesa about old family stories. She even complimented Naledi on the meal. Everything felt too perfect. After everyone retired upstairs, Naledi began checking the windows before locking the house. As she passed the downstairs study, she noticed something unusual. The door was slightly open. Inside, Ayanda stood at the safe built into the wall. She removed a thick brown envelope, then placed several documents inside her handbag. Before closing the safe, she paused. She looked over her shoulder. Naledi stepped back into the darkness before she could be seen. Several minutes later, Ayanda quietly left the study. She didn't go upstairs. Instead, she walked toward the garage. Curious Naledi followed at a safe distance. Through the small window in the garage door, she watched Ayanda unlock the trunk of her car. The brown envelope disappeared inside. Then Ayanda looked around carefully before locking the vehicle again. Naledi memorized everything: the envelope, the trunk, the exact parking space. As Ayanda walked back into the house, a single realization settled over her. Ayanda was preparing to move something, or hide something. Either way, whatever rested inside that envelope had suddenly become just as important as the laboratory reports hidden beneath Naledi's floorboard. And somehow, she knew the answers they had been searching for were now locked inside the trunk of Ayanda's car. Naledi barely slept. Every few minutes, she replayed the image of Ayanda placing the thick brown envelope into the trunk of her car. The envelope had not been stored in the study safe by accident, nor had it been hidden in the vehicle without reason. Whatever it contained was important enough to remove from the house, important enough to protect, or perhaps important enough to destroy if someone came asking questions. Before sunrise, Naledi quietly messaged Sifo. She moved documents into her car last night. His reply came almost immediately. Do not touch anything. Wait for me. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. just as footsteps approached the kitchen. Palesa entered, wearing her usual pale blue cardigan. "Good morning, child." "Good morning, Mama." Palesa smiled gently. "You've been carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders lately." Naledi forced a small smile. "I'm only a little tired." Palesa reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Don't forget to take care of yourself." The kindness in those simple words nearly brought tears to Naledi's eyes. She knew she had to protect this woman, no matter what happened next. At breakfast, Ayanda appeared unusually cheerful. "I've scheduled lunch with the Women's Business Foundation." Tabo smiled. "That should be good for networking." "I'll probably be gone until early afternoon." Naledi quietly noticed another detail. Ayanda placed her handbag beside her chair, the same handbag she had used to carry the brown envelope to the garage the night before. After breakfast, Tabo left for a board meeting. Exactly 20 minutes later, Ayanda drove away. Naledi waited until the SUV disappeared through the gates before calling Sifo. "I'm outside," he said. Less than 5 minutes later, his car entered the driveway. He walked into the house carrying only a leather briefcase. Palesa welcomed him warmly. "Ooh, what a pleasant surprise." "I was nearby," Sifo replied with a smile. "I wanted to review a few family matters." While Palesa prepared tea, Sifo quietly spoke to Naledi in the hallway. "Where is the vehicle?" "In the garage." "Has anyone touched it?" "No." He nodded. "Good." The two walked toward the garage. Sifo examined the trunk carefully. "It's locked." Naledi lowered her voice. "I saw her place the envelope inside." Sifo remained thoughtful. We can't open it without permission." "I know, but if Tabo agrees—" Before either could continue, a familiar voice echoed from behind them. "What are you two doing?" Tabo had returned unexpectedly. Both turned around. Sifo answered calmly. "I wanted to discuss something privately." Tabo looked puzzled. "About what?" Sifo took a deep breath. "I think we need to speak inside." Minutes later, the three sat in Tabo's study. Naledi remained standing near the door. Sifo spoke carefully. "For several weeks, I've delayed certain legal documents." Tabo nodded. "I remember. There was a reason." He placed several files on the desk. "I became concerned that your mother might be signing papers without fully understanding them." Tabo frowned. Ayanda said she was becoming forgetful. Dr. Nkozi's laboratory report slid across the desk. Sifo remained silent. Tabo picked it up. His expression slowly changed as he read. "What is this?" Naledi finally spoke. "The tea sample." "What tea?" "The one Mama never drank." Tabo looked confused. Sifo handed him the second report. "And this is from the water left beside her bed." Silence filled the room. Tabo read every page carefully. When he finished, he looked directly at Naledi. "Why wasn't I told?" she answered honestly. "Because we didn't have enough proof." His voice became quieter. "You believed someone was drugging my mother." Naledi nodded. "Yes, and you thought that person was my wife." "I hoped I was wrong." No one spoke for several long moments. Finally, Sifo said, "We aren't asking you to believe us. We're asking you to investigate before it's too late." Tabo slowly stood. His face had lost all color. "Show me everything." For the next hour, Naledi revealed every piece of evidence: the hidden recording, the laboratory reports, the replaced medicine bottles, the midnight glass of water, the whispered conversations. She admitted where certainty ended and suspicion began. She exaggerated nothing. When she finished, Tabo remained standing beside the window. "I don't know what to think." Sifo answered quietly. You don't need to decide today. You only need to protect your mother. Tabo nodded slowly. What do we do now? Before Sifo could answer, the sound of a vehicle entering the driveway echoed outside. Ayanda. She had returned much earlier than expected. Naledi looked through the curtains. She's back. Tabo made a decision. No one says anything. He gathered every document into the desk drawer. Sifo closed his briefcase. Within seconds, the study looked perfectly ordinary. A knock came at the door. Ayanda entered smiling. I didn't know we had company. Sifo stood politely. I stopped by to discuss routine legal updates. Without me. They concern your husband's family trust. Ayanda's smile remained steady. I see. Her eyes briefly moved across the room. She noticed Tabo's unusually serious expression. Is everything all right? He forced a calm smile. Just business. She studied him for another moment, then nodded. I'll let you continue. As soon as she left, Tabo whispered, She knows something is different. Sifo agreed. Then we move quickly. That evening, Dr. Nkosi arrived unexpectedly at the mansion. This time he requested a full examination of Palesa in the presence of Tabo. Ayanda attempted to remain in the room. I usually help answer questions. Dr. Nkosi smiled politely. Today, I'd prefer to hear directly from my patient. For the first time, Tabo supported the request. I think that's reasonable. Ayanda hesitated, then reluctantly stepped outside. The examination lasted nearly an hour. Palesa answered every question clearly. She remembered names from 30 years earlier, financial decisions, family history, current events. When it ended, Dr. Nkosi turned toward Tabo. In my professional opinion, he paused. Your mother is fully capable of making her own decisions. Tabo slowly closed his eyes. Months of assumptions collapsed in a single sentence. That night, after everyone had gone upstairs, he quietly entered his mother's bedroom. Palesa looked surprised. You're still awake? He sat beside her bed. I'm sorry. She looked confused. For what? For not listening. Tears filled his eyes. I should have asked you instead of believing everyone else. Palesa gently touched his face. You were trying to protect your family. I failed. She smiled sadly. No, you were deceived. Mother and son embraced silently. Standing unnoticed in the hallway, Naledi watched with tears in her own eyes. It was the first time in months that she had seen genuine trust returning between them, but the moment of healing lasted only seconds. Downstairs, a car door slammed. Naledi looked through the upstairs window. Ayanda stood beside her SUV. The trunk was open. The brown envelope was gone. She was holding a mobile phone against her ear. Even from that distance, Naledi could see panic replacing the calm confidence Ayanda had worn for weeks. Whatever had been hidden inside that envelope, it had just disappeared. And Ayanda now understood something she had feared from the very beginning. Her carefully constructed plan was beginning to collapse. Ayanda stood beside the open trunk of her SUV, gripping her phone so tightly that her knuckles turned white. The envelope is gone, she whispered. A voice on the other end spoke too quietly for anyone else to hear. No, Ayanda replied, her composure finally beginning to crack. Someone has been inside the car. From the upstairs window, Naledi watched everything. She immediately turned toward Tabo. She's discovered it. Tabo's expression hardened. What envelope? Before Naledi could answer, Sifo stepped into the hallway, carrying the same thick brown envelope. I removed it. Both Tabo and Naledi looked at him in surprise. I used the spare emergency key you authorized years ago, Sifo explained calmly. After our conversation this afternoon, I believed those documents needed to be secured before they disappeared. He placed the envelope on a nearby table. No one has opened it yet. Tabo nodded slowly. Let's do it now. Inside the study, Sifo carefully broke the seal. The room fell silent as document after document emerged. Some were revised trust agreements. Others transferred financial authority. Several pages granted Ayanda broad control over family investments if Palesa were declared mentally incapable of managing her affairs. The final document made everyone stop breathing. It was an unsigned declaration requesting the appointment of a permanent financial guardian. The proposed guardian was Ayanda. Thabo stared at the pages in disbelief. My mother never agreed to any of this. Sifo shook his head. She couldn't have. None of these documents were completed legally. Naledi noticed another sheet tucked beneath the others. It listed dates, medication schedules, medical appointments, notes describing episodes of confusion and memory loss. Every incident matched situations Ayanda herself had created. The realization struck Tabo with crushing force. She was building a case. Sifo nodded. A carefully documented narrative. At that very moment, footsteps approached the study. Ayanda entered without knocking. Her eyes immediately fell upon the open envelope. For the first time since Naledi had known her, the confident smile disappeared completely. What are you doing? Tabo answered quietly. We could ask you the same question. Ayanda quickly recovered. Those are legal papers. They were hidden in your car. I was protecting them. Sifo calmly replied, From whom? She hesitated. From being misplaced. Tabo held up one of the unsigned trust documents. Why does this transfer control of my mother's assets to you? Ayanda folded her arms. That was only a proposal. Without telling us, you've misunderstood. Naledi remained silent. She had learned long ago that Ayanda's greatest weapon was conversation. The longer she spoke, the more she reshaped reality. This time, however, she was no longer speaking only to frightened servants or an uncertain son. She faced people carrying evidence. A knock interrupted the confrontation. 2 police officers entered the hallway, accompanied by Dr. Nkosi. Ayanda looked stunned. What is this? Dr. Nkosi spoke calmly. I requested a welfare check after reviewing medical evidence. One officer addressed everyone politely. We're here to understand a few concerns. Ayanda immediately protested. This is absurd. Sifo handed the officers copies of the laboratory reports. Then he provided the legal documents. Finally, Naledi offered the digital recorder. It contains a recording from the night someone entered Mrs. Dlamini's bedroom. The officers listened carefully. Ayanda's face slowly lost its color. When the whisper from the recording played, "So you'll sleep peacefully, tomorrow will be much easier," the room became completely silent. One officer looked toward Ayanda. Can you explain why you entered Mrs. Dlamini's room after midnight? Ayanda opened her mouth, then closed it again. For the first time, she had no explanation ready. The second officer asked another question. Can you explain why laboratory testing found sedative compounds in 2 separate drinks intended for Mrs. Dlamini? Ayanda looked desperately toward Tabo. You believe this? His voice broke. I wanted to believe you. She stepped closer. I did everything for us. No. He slowly shook his head. You did everything for yourself. Tears filled Ayanda's eyes. I only wanted security. You already had a family. I was afraid of losing everything. And now, she looked around the room. The silence answered for her. The officers informed her that she would need to accompany them while the investigation continued. She did not resist. As she reached the front door, she stopped beside Palesa. The elderly woman stood quietly with tears in her eyes. "I never hated you," Palesa said softly. "I treated you like my own daughter." Ayanda lowered her head. For the first time, genuine shame crossed her face. She said nothing. The officers led her outside. The front door closed gently behind them. The mansion became silent, not with fear, with relief. Several days later, investigators confirmed the laboratory findings. Additional testing matched the sedative compound found in containers recovered from the house. Financial investigators also determined that the trust documents had never become legally valid because Saifo had refused to process them without proper safeguards. Palesa's assets remained untouched. More importantly, her dignity remained intact. 1 week later, Tabo invited the entire household into the garden. Fresh flowers surrounded the old wooden bench where his mother often prayed. He stood before everyone. "I owe someone an apology." He turned toward Palesa first. "Mama," his voice trembled, "I failed to protect the woman who sacrificed everything for me." Palesa embraced him before he could continue. "My son, you came back. That is enough." Tabo then faced Naledi. "No amount of gratitude can repay what you've done." Naledi smiled modestly. "I only did what anyone should do." He shook his head. "No. Many people notice small things. You acted." He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a university scholarship established in her younger brother's name, fully funded through graduation. Naledi stared at it in disbelief. "You remembered. You once told Mama why you took this job." Tears filled her eyes. "I never expected." Tabo smiled. "You protected my family. Now let us help yours." Months passed. The mansion slowly became a home again. Palesa resumed tending her roses every morning. No one told her she was too old. No one questioned her memory. Dr. Nkosi continued visiting, not as a worried physician, but as a trusted family friend. Saifo remained the family's legal advisor, ensuring every important decision was made openly and honestly. As for Naledi, she continued working for the Dlamini family, while her brother began university with hope instead of fear. Sometimes visitors asked Palesa what had saved her during the darkest chapter of her life. She always smiled before answering. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't power. It was one young woman who refused to ignore what everyone else chose not to see. And every time Naledi heard those words, she quietly remembered the morning she almost convinced herself to stay silent. She knew that courage rarely arrived as something loud or dramatic. Sometimes courage was simply choosing to speak when fear begged you to remain quiet. Every family faces moments when trust is tested, but the greatest danger often does not arrive with anger, loud voices, or obvious cruelty. Sometimes it comes quietly hidden behind polite words, warm smiles, and carefully crafted appearances. This story reminds us that true kindness is not measured by what people say in public, but by how they treat those who are vulnerable when no one else is watching. Palesa survived not because she was wealthy or powerful, but because one ordinary young woman refused to ignore the small warning signs that everyone else dismissed. Naledi proved that courage does not require fame, influence, or great strength. It begins with a decision to stand for what is right, even when standing alone feels frightening. The story also teaches us an important lesson about love and family. Love should never blind us to the truth. Trust is precious, but it should always be accompanied by honesty, respect, and the willingness to listen. Tabo's greatest mistake was not loving his wife. It was failing to truly hear the quiet voice of the mother who had sacrificed everything for him. Sometimes the people who love us most speak softly, while deception speaks with confidence. We must never allow assumptions, appearances, or convenience to replace genuine understanding. Perhaps the most powerful message is that integrity always leaves a lasting legacy. Wealth can disappear. Power can change hands. Lies may survive for a season. But compassion, courage, and truth always outlive deception. One act of bravery from Naledi protected an innocent life, restored a broken family, and reminded everyone that even an ordinary person can change the course of another person's destiny. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear your thoughts. What lesson stayed with you the most? Have you ever witnessed someone quietly doing the right thing when no one else would? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may inspire someone else. If you enjoy powerful stories about justice, family, hope, and unforgettable life lessons, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next inspiring journey.